History of Exchange Server 2000 and 2003. In our previous lesson, we learned about Exchange Server 4.0 and 5.0 history. So this is going to be about Exchange Server 2000 and 2003. So as Microsoft was just releasing new updates or new versions in Exchange Server, they were making improvements, and they were bringing new features and like enhancements and performance. So that's why Exchange Server new versions really made the industries or companies interested to do the upgrade. So Exchange Server 2000 was just in the public on year 2000, and it was also known as version 6, and it just came to the market on November 29, 2000, and there was some major improvements in the limitation imposed by the previous version. So one of the improvements that they made was the cluster in of servers. Like in previous version, what we had was like if you had a setup where you had like two servers and you had clustering configured. So what you were doing in previous version like 5.5 or 5.0, you were configuring two Exchange servers together and you were making a cluster, and then if one of these servers goes down, if one of the Exchange server goes down, this server is still working and it's like an active server. So if one server goes down, the other server is just going to work. So what they did with Exchange Server 2000, they just removed the limitation of having only two servers in a cluster, and they just made it four. So with Exchange Server 2000, you were able to do like clustering for four servers, which was really good. So for example, if this server also goes down, this is in here, this is gonna work, and if this goes down, this is going to work. So you have like four servers working for you and doing the failover, and it is like an active to standby. If it is active to standby, that it is like failover. And then if you have a setup where you have like clustering configured and all of these servers are acting as a active server, which means that this is all working for failover and load balancing. So if a client sends a request, the first one will come here. If a second client sends a request, it will come here. If the third client sends a request, it will come here. If a fourth client sends a request, it will go to the other server. So it's doing a load balancing and then failover. If it's a active to active failover or active to active cluster configured. So we are going to see in which version of Exchange active to active cluster was capable, like you were able to do it actually. So one of the major improvement was like the clustering, where you were able to do like four servers clustering in the supported database size. So one other thing that we had was support for instant messaging was also introduced. However, this version required full Microsoft Active Directory infrastructure to be in place. So if you see with the other versions, with the previous versions, the full Active Directory infrastructure was not required, as they had a separate directory service through which Exchange Server was running. But with this one, the Active Directory services was required in order to install or configure Exchange Server 2000. Like as I said, like unlike the previous versions, this version did not have any inbuilt directory services or service. So this factor actually acted as a deterrence for many customers to upgrade to this version. So when they saw that, oh, Active Directory is required, we do not need a separate directory service for Exchange Server. So let's do the upgrade. Let's do it, because what they are gonna do now is, like, if they have a server which is acting as a domain controller and they have Active Directory installed in here, what they need to do is they just need to get Exchange Server 2000 ready and then install, and Exchange Server will gather all information about the user accounts and all the mailboxes, or it's gonna store all the user accounts information in the Active Directory. Unlike with the previous version, you had an Active Directory and then you had your Exchange, and then with this Exchange you had a separate directory services where you had to store all your users information, which was a headache, and it was like extra work that you had to do. So with the Exchange Server 2000, that was one of the other improvements that they did. So let me quickly remove this so that I can explain. So one other thing that you see in here, Exchange Server 2000 required Windows Server 2000 to install. So in order to install Exchange Server 2000, you were required to have Exchange Server 2000. And then Active Directory, as I explained, was used for global address list. So in global address list, what does it mean? All your users, accounts, or emails that you have is in global address list. So that's why we use global address list too, because global address list contains all your users information. That's why whenever you are trying to send an email to someone, all you need to do is you need to type the name and then it will resolve, because that is already in global address list. If a user account is not in global address list, it will not resolve. We will see how global address list work in our upcoming practical lab videos. So as I said, it is integrated with Active Directory to access user mailbox. And then one of the other great features that was introduced was ActiveX, and this ActiveX was introduced in Outlook Web Access, where, as I explained in our previous video, where you were able to access your emails through a web browser from anywhere you want, as long as you have internet and OWA is accessible externally in your organization. So this ActiveX actually enabled a drag and drop feature where you were able to drag an email from inbox to a folder, for example. So you were able to do the drag and drop. So one other Exchange server that we have is Exchange Server 2003. So Exchange Server 2003 came in market at September 28, 2003. It is also known as version 6.5, and this version had the capability to run on Windows Server 2000. So one of the good thing that Exchange Server 2003 have is you were able to install Exchange Server 2003 on Server 2000. So organizations did not need to buy any extra operating system license. For example, if they were running Server 2000, they did not require to buy Server 2003 to install Exchange Server 2003. So it was supported on Server 2000 actually. So this version was also capable of running on Exchange on Server 2003. So Server 2000 and Server 2003 were the operating system that was just used in Exchange Server 2003. And one of the other thing that you need to know is that Server 2003 Server 2003 32-bit was supported with Exchange Server 2003. So this is one of the other things that you need to know. So 32-bit of Windows Server 2003 was supported with Exchange Server 2003. So if you were trying to install Exchange Server 2003 on a 64-bit version of Windows Server 2003, it was not supported when Exchange Server was released. One of the highlighted features of this version was enhanced disaster recovery feature, which allowed administrators to bring the server online quickly by allowing the servers to send and receive mails while the messages stored are being recovered from backup. So when like you had a disaster recovery solution where you were just trying to restore the messages from the backup, one of the good thing that you had at that time, while you were trying to recover your messages from the messages store, you were still able to send and receive emails. That was really a good thing that they came up with. Exchange Server 2003 also introduced improved antivirus and anti-spam features. That was another good thing. And then this version just came up into two different flavors, and one of them was Standard Edition and one of them was Enterprise Edition. So Standard Edition and Enterprise Edition was two different versions. One was for small to medium businesses and one was for large organizations. So a standard version allowed us at a maximum database size of 75 GB. So 75 GB was the maximum database size for Exchange Server 2003. And then Enterprise Edition allowed us 16 terabyte of the database size. So this is for standard and this is for Enterprise Edition. So that was the main difference between Enterprise and Standard Edition. The version of Microsoft Exchange Server was compatible with 32-bit version only, and will not was not going to install on 64-bit. So as I said earlier, was only supported with 32-bit version, not with 64-bit version of Windows Server 2003. So one of the other thing that they added was it was also integrated with Active Directory to improve the performance and reliability. And then they added mobility feature where you were able to configure emails into your smartphones, iPads, and many different other mobile devices, and then access your emails from wherever you want. So like POP3 IMAP features, like POP3 was these days many smart devices, and back in old days, like in year 2003 or before that, there were many mobile devices that had the feature or that had the option of POP3 and IMAP. So at that time, Exchange Server 2003 came up with mobility feature, which really helped everyone to access their emails from wherever they want through their mobile devices. One of the other things that I explained about the active to active and active to passive clustering feature was introduced with Exchange Server 2003. So the concept again with active to active and active to passive is, for example, you have two servers. If you have like active to active cluster configured, what you're gonna do is the first user who's gonna send the response, it will just go to server 1, and the second second request will go to server 2. So it's active to active cluster where they are doing a failover and then they are doing a load balancing. So they're doing like two different things at the same time. And if you have active to standby setup, all the requests will go to active server. It's not gonna go to standby server. If just in case the active server goes down, the standby server will become active, and then the clients will start sending requests to the active server. That's how the active to active and active to passive clustering feature works. And one of the other good things that was introduced in Exchange Server 2003 was front end and back end. So front end server and back end server role. So front-end server role is responsible for mail flow. At that time, it was used for mail flow. So all mail flow was done by front end, and the back end was responsible to store the mailboxes and public folders, all those things. So this was responsible to store your mailboxes and public folders and databases, all those things. And then front end server was responsible to do the mail flow, like transportation of emails from one place to another place. So that was the history of Exchange Server 2000 and 2003. I hope that this lesson was informative for you, and let me know if you have any questions.